When will 9mm rival 45 ACP? When it's the 9mm Federal 115 grain plus P plus, the famous 9B PLE. So I'm going to test that in my 5-inch M&P here. And the 9B PLE, I believe was something that was created by Federal for the Illinois State Police. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but it was something like that I read in the past that, you know, that's what they used, and it's a plus P plus developed specifically for law enforcement. Now 45 ACP for a long time has been a very good cartridge, and this is our 45 ACP 230 grain Hi-Shok. Hi-Shok was before the Hydra-Shock, and it's a pretty decent jacketed hollow point bullet in 45 ACP. So I'm really curious if a 45 ACP can at all rival, or I should say, should the 9mm plus P rival, plus P plus rival that 45 ACP, because, you know, you have double the bullet weight with that 45 ACP. 45 ACP has a very long track record, but if you hot rod that 9mm, will that do a good job? Now, I've seen a lot of statistical data on this particularly, and it's pretty good for stopping power. I think it's somewhere up there about 90%, which is a lot better than a lot of 9mm loads. And that's one thing about 9mm. From what I've seen, it tends to kind of not expand right away and dump its energy right away, so it doesn't really perform that well. But something like this probably will. So our 5-inch M&P here, our Smith & Wesson M&P for our 9mm plus P plus, and I'm going to use my Glock 41 5.3 inch to test the 45 ACP. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. I'm just going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential is of those cartridges. And then after that, I'm going to do more of a real world simulation where I'll have 4 layers of heavy denim on the first 3-inch block here that represents our pectoral muscle. After that 3 inches, we'll have a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard that's going to represent hitting ribs or sternum. That'll be more of our real world simulation. We'll see how they compare that way. And then I am going to shoot up my steel to see what kind of practical shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, I'm about 5 yards from the target, 4 yards from the chronograph. First up, we have our 45 ACP rated at 850 feet per second. Let's see how close I get to that through my 5.3-inch Glock 41 here. 854, 825, 844, 861. I pulled that last one, kind of letting it go, so I definitely jerked that shot. Very, very low recoil though, and that's kind of one thing I was doing there. I was just kind of testing its felt recoil. It feels real spongy and light, so I was just kind of letting it go. Pulled my shot, but we can see that we got about rated velocity on average here. Now our 9mm plus P plus rated at 1300 feet per second. I don't know if that's through a 4-inch barrel or what, but let's see what we get here. How close we get to 1300. 9mm plus P plus. 1396. 1404. 1405. 1384. 1368. So definitely above rated velocity. We're hitting 357 mag. Velocities, not quite the energies because the bullet's a little bit lighter. However, you know, that's kind of what I'm looking for, and this is what I kind of see when you see rounds that have good stopping power, is they will dump that energy quick. Even if they don't penetrate to adequate depths like 12 inches plus, you still see in the statistics they do well. So I'm really curious to what we'll get here. So let's hit our ballistics gel block, see what we get. All right, plain clear ballistics, our best potential. Definitely a difference in how they felt when they were fired. You know, this is very spongy. Muzzle rise, but very spongy, and you know, you don't feel much blast. The 9mm plus P plus, not much muzzle rise, but the opposite. You can feel that pressure. So 45 ACP plain gel. All right, 9mm plus P plus. We'll take a look. All right, kind of what I expected to see. We have a whole huge amount of energy dump right away here. It's kind of hard to see through here, but yeah, our 9mm on top of 45 on the bottom. just a lot bigger energy dump. We're busting off pedal pieces. Our 45 ACP did a lot of damage in here. I don't know, you know, how to account for that except by tumbling, because I don't see any expansion whatsoever. With our 45 ACP, we're right here at about 19 3/4 inches penetration. No expansion. However, seen that damage, looks like it tumbled. Also, I see this time and time again. If this were like a 45 ACP 230 grain full metal jacket, it would be up here. But being a hollow point, it doesn't over penetrate. So it doesn't turn into a full metal jacket. It doesn't expand. It actually does okay. So let's put on our denim, put in our MDF, see how they compare that way. All right, 45 ACP, it didn't expand in plain gel. I don't expect it to with the denim. However, the medium density fiberboard can sometimes, you know, deform the nose of that bullet, you know, rib simulation, and maybe do better. So 45 ACP. Interesting here. This mag nose dive down in there. We got to load. No, we didn't. This Glock generally runs fine on standard pressure. You typically only see those malfunctions I get when I'm like running 45 Super and whatnot. So that is a little interesting there. Let's hit with our 9mm plus P plus through our denim and medium density fiberboard. Let's go take a look. All right, I make a sound here because, you know, everything went flying. We can definitely see down here is our 45. We don't have any expansion. This right here tells us a lot here. It tells us about the energy dump, and even though there was denim in the way, it still impacted that rib simulation with a massive amount of expansion and force. A 45 ACP didn't really do much any different than what it did before. It's not terrible, but we're at 20.5 inches. Our 9mm here, however, and this is very spot on with what I've seen in a lot of the statistics here. About 11 inches of penetration. I've looked at the statistics, and what they do a lot of times in those statistics is they'll take the real world statistics, and this particular round is somewhere around 90 percentile, something like 90% tested in the real world. And that just means 9 times out of 10 when a shot is fired and landed, it stops the threat. And I take that particular statistics more at face value than a lot of other cartridges, because it was an official law enforcement cartridge, so it was used a lot. But after the fact, then they gel test that stuff, and what you see is about 11 inches in gel, and that's what I'm seeing here. So looks can be kind of deceiving sometimes with statistics. Now with 11 inches, it's not going to go through an arm into the thoracic cavity adequately, but if you made a front-on shot with this, which most of them are, you're going to stop that threat. So let me see what kind of shootability I can get with these on steel now. All right, so let's take a look at the bullets pulled from the gel. I think the best word here is aftermath. I had to be a crazy nightmare surgeon again, cutting different angles and everything to get this stuff out here. Our plain gel shots here. 45 ACP, definitely not impressive. You know, that has a massively huge hollow cavity too, which is really disappointing to have such a big hollow cavity and to not have expansion. And we're talking a 5.3 inch pistol. That should have got expansion because we got rated velocity. With rated velocity, why is there no expansion? Now with our 9mm here, all kinds of different pieces here. And I know it's kind of cliche to say, and I hate it when people say it, but I would not want to get hit with that. A lot of people say that all the time, but when I say it, it means something a little bit different. Like, okay, this could be pulled out of you, and if it didn't hit something vital, you'd be fine. This is like destroying something really bad that you need, like muscles and whatnot. So no thank you on that. With our medium density fiberboard, this is weird though. We did not get that extreme fragmentation. I think that's just simply because we're lowering that expansion. And you're looking at that and say, you're lowering that? You're lowering that? And yeah, like you can tell by looking at this 9mm here that, you know, that's massive expansion, but that's after hitting denim. So what that's going to tell you is that the expansion was significantly bigger than this with no denim, and that's why we got explosion. But through denim, it slowed the expansion down to get only, you know, with that pedal, we're almost an inch. With the rest of the body of this, we're probably well over a, you know, right there about 3/4 of an inch. Our 45 ACP, really no change. You got a little denim in there, slightly more bullet nose deformation to one side, but basically nothing that looks that impressive. So really your only advantage with the 45 ACP versus this is if you're, let's just say your carry gun was on you when you're out in the woods and it's like a black bear attacked you. I think this would probably do better than this, but for stopping typical threats, I think our 9mm is pretty superior in this test. So that's a look at that up close. All right, 12 yards from the target, which is interestingly enough the distance that the Illinois State Police again did a study, and they found that, you know, if you can make impacts from 12 yards against your attacker, that's the distance where you're almost never actually injured yourself. But any closer, and even though you might stop a threat, you're also shot yourself, which is not good. So 12 yards from the target. Also, I tried 10 yards for a while. I was getting hit with bullet fragments, so 12 yards is just enough back here for me to feel comfortable. So 45 ACP, see what kind of controllability I can get with this. All right, I do feel like it takes a little bit of extra control to get that gun under control. So 9mm, let's see what I can do with this. I would say the same recoil but less muzzle flip. So let me back it up from some distance because these are longer barrels. See what kind of accuracy I can keep getting with these. All right, 75 yards from the target. I do this distance simply because it's fun. These are longer barrels, longer sight radius, and also there's a big difference in velocity. So that's kind of fun to see the difference in timing from shot to the time it hits the steel. So 45 ACP, I don't know if I can hit the steel very well with this, but let me try. All right, I think that one bounced off the ground and hit the back of the steel. I could feel each time I was gonna miss that. I could feel it. I knew I was gonna miss when I missed. That gun just doesn't fit my hand all that well. My M&P fits me a little better, but let's just see how this does. Missing some. That's really interesting. I'm not really sure why I'm missing and why I'm hitting, because I'm not changing my point of hold here. I'm trying to figure out where they're more consistently hitting because it's hard to tell. So I'm gonna say it has to just all be on me, because, you know, I started aiming at the head of that silhouette and I started hitting several, but then I did pull one high, so it's probably just me today. But overall, they're pretty accurate cartridges here. Very interesting to see this. Now I felt like the consistency of the accuracy, I guess from distance, felt a little better with the 45. Like I felt like if I missed, like I missed 3 times, however many shots I fired, and every one, the second that trigger went, I knew I was not going to hit, because I felt myself, you know, twist my wrist one time, and another time I just felt something where I wasn't gripping as tight. It was just a slight variance from what I was doing, just from a little fatigue, and I knew instantly, boom, I'm not going to hit that shot. And those 3 times I was dead on with, I wasn't going to hit. Now with our 9mm, it's a little less consistent at distance, where I can't really tell why I'm not hitting. They kind of shot not in a very consistent miss pattern, you know. It's not like I was consistently hitting right or left or whatever. It's like they're below it, they're above it, whatever. So I don't know how to account for that, but I'm going to say both of these are really good cartridges. However, our 45, you know, it's not great. We're not going to get expansion, and I'll backtrack. I don't mean it's really good, but it's acceptable. It's acceptable enough, even though it didn't expand. Part of that reason is because the goats at Strasbourg test, they actually showed that, you know, 45 caliber 45 ACP was the one and the only in a full metal jacket that was acceptable for self-defense. And when we put a hollow point and it doesn't expand, all it does is basically reduces the over penetration. So I'm going to say it's acceptable, but not good. Our 9mm here, even though we had a lot less penetration than what we're typically seeing, in my experience, from my studies, from watching videos, from studying different cartridges, from my own ballistic testing, what I have seen is the main downfall of 9mm is that a lot of it seems to be designed to shoot and perform well in gel testing, but not necessarily in the real world. So what you often see with most cartridges that really do good as a street stopper, like 357 mag, what you'll see is in that first little bit of gel, massive energy dump, expansion, and then you get a little bit less than 12 inches penetration. This 9mm did that, and the street numbers support that. So what you have is one of the few 9mm that will actually be a good stopper, in my opinion. With a lot of 9mm, even Gold Dot and HST, what you see is that bullet will go in, you know, it'll go in 4 or 5 inches before it starts expanding. And even though at the end result, look, I pulled this, you know, 75 caliber expansion out of that gel, it didn't expand fast enough to really inflict that shock effect that you need. As with this right here, you know, people that gel test it, well, it didn't go very deep, it's a fail. But in the real world, it's not. It's actually a very good cartridge, and that's kind of what I'm wanting to see in gel, is that instant rapid expansion. So my opinion here is that if these were both used in a real situation, the 9mm would definitely it would probably stop a threat immediately. Our 45 ACP, your only real comparison here is full metal jacket in some sense, because, you know, even though it didn't over penetrate, it's still not doing a whole lot more in that distance. So you're still looking at maybe a 65 percentile chance it's going to stop a threat with one shot, which isn't bad. That's better than 380 ACP hollow point, but for 45 ACP you could do a lot better. Like Hi-Shok 230 grain, that expands beautifully, doesn't really penetrate very far in energy dumps. So there's a lot better choices. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.